Hello, and welcome to this video presenting my work on the bodies of TEI, investigating norms and assumptions in the design of embodied interaction. My name is Katta Spiel, and my sign name is... My current affiliation is with TU Wien within the Faculty of Informatics. Within the last few years, but definitely since the inception of the TEI conference in 2007, embodied computing and embodied interaction has garnered increasing interest from researchers and designers. A sentence we hear over and over again is, technologies are moving on and even into the body. But what are those bodies in the focus of embodied interaction? Who do we account for when we talk about the body? In embracing the what is also called somatic turn, we research and design personal artifacts. But for whom? To answer this question, I conducted a feminist critical discourse analysis with methodological implementation according to feminist content analysis on 45 papers published at TEI since 2007. I had started my corpus assembly with an initial sample of 566 papers, which I filtered according to general topical fit, length, and content. Over the years, I noticed a steady increase on papers on embodied interaction, with a noticeable dip in 2019 and a vibrant reinvigoration in 2020. It was early in the year. On a side note, the conference only adopted the term embodied to its title in 2009. All in all, I identified 4 types of contributions within this corpus: material investigations, design explorations, technological artifacts, and theoretical analyses. Most of the papers presented technologies, followed by design, theory, and material, with material also being the newest contribution type, only consisting of papers published within the last 5 years. Papers with a material contribution tend to only illustrate and concern themselves with body parts, and yet there is a generalization to the body as an abstract ideal, though the abstract becomes very concrete very fast. In one paper, bodies are themselves becoming material, specifically their hair. Though the authors only refer to white people's hair as human hair, which ignores the racist and oppressive politics around black hair and renders black people's hair essentially as less than human. And it would be easy to say, but Katta, this is only one paper. But it's not. I noticed how visible bodies or body parts in basically all papers are light-skinned or white and appear youthful. Should the bodies we attend to in embodied interaction really only be the bodies of white people? Similar to this example, designerly assumptions generally default to implicit norms largely by what remains unaddressed. By focusing on the joy and the positive experiences we aim for in our designs, we conveniently ignore conversations we need to have about trauma and class. For example, in delineating the potential of embodied computing for playful eating experiences, the authors of another paper presume that eating and food is inherently related to joy, implicitly disregarding the high and increasing prevalence of eating disorders, as well as the problems faced by people in poverty regarding food security. Temporarily constrained limitations on food comprise positively connotated experiences only for those who did not have to face these limitations outside of their own volition. Should we really design embodied interaction just for the middle and upper classes? Now, the technological contributions made span from wearables to play scenarios, music and art, as well as artifacts for reflection. Though, in that, authors rarely specify the required skills relevant to engage with a specific technology. If disability is at all accounted for, it is as the other, the novelty, and the isolated special case. Disabled bodies are further embedded in medical context, and embodied computing technologies aim to fix or correct them. Considering the many contributions oriented on allowing people to explore their creativity and appreciate their bodily feats, not considering disabled people in these contexts makes me wonder, should technologies facilitating embodied interaction really just be for people without a disability? And when we think about bodies, as might be understandable in theoretical explorations around the bodies, they are talked about in the abstract, without attention to details and differences. However, this is also a choice. European and North American white men dominate the reference space in this realm, particularly regarding phenomenology, even though alternatives exist. But also in other regards, theoretical explorations tend to be inherently oriented on assumed and implicit norms. For example, if walking is established as a mode of supporting creativity, as suggested in one of the papers, this has damning implications for people moving by using wheelchairs, crutches, scooters, or other aids. The only time disabled people and their minority body minds are referred to, they serve as a thought experiment for non-disabled people. Their, respectively our, lives are only relevant to support theories that center their, respectively our, differences as deviating from an abstracted norm. And in a similar vein, children, elderly, trans people, and Black people are all loudly made absent as well, as their lived bodies comprise special cases for theoretical explorations, but never the base. Should the bodies we think about in embodied interaction really all just represent that tiny privileged minority? So let's talk about the bodies of TEI. One thing I find quite curious is that there is a notion of talking about bodies in the singular, as in most publications talk about the body. So much so I had to edit this paper several times to not fall into the same writing pattern myself. It seems deeply ingrained and it required really a lot of intensive unlearning for me. Anyway, speaking on the body in the singular, and I quote Di Paolo Cuffari and De Jager, hides the intricate complexity and diversity of bodies under a false universality, the, and singleness, body. Thus, the image the phrase invokes is that of an abstract, adult, healthy, isolated, nondescript, typically male, typically white body. If we speak of bodies instead, we immediately connote relations and plurality, at least leaving the door open to think them. End quote. Hence, I urge researchers on embodied computing at TEI and beyond to start talking about bodies as a plural as a first step towards accountability for a plurality of body minds. Embracing such an accountability does require us to also attend to the material consequences of our research and design works. If the entirety of papers on embodied computing in the TEI community exclude such marginalized experiences and others, we need to collectively reflect on how our work might contribute to these material effects. To not just demand that reflection, but also help guide it, I close the paper and here with a set of hopefully productive provocations. For one, I suggest we update theories in that we expand the current set of theories informing our work. I'm convinced that drawing in complementary perspectives and thickening our theoretical background will strengthen the contributions our field can make, and not just rely on phenomenology. Further, forcing ourselves to be open to plurality has the potential to consciously train us to think beyond static and singular norms. If from the start we think about bodies, we think about interactions, we think about technologies in multiplicity, we might account for differences in embodied experiences as well. Another step lies in checking our privileges. If the ideal body is the designer's body, as long as they are light-skinned, slim, and/or flat-chested, we need to reflect on our own embodiments and how they play a role in creating technologies for embodied interactions. I ask, where are the trans, the crip, the fat, the queer, the Black, the mad, the damaged, the sick, the old, the young, the dead, the sexual bodies in embodied computing? Also, don't be too hung up with what you intended. Same counts for me. I dare researchers and designers in embodied computing to disregard our intent, listen to critique appreciatively, and focus on the material effects of our work. So even if we tried our best, perfect work is not possible either way. Hence, we need to acknowledge the imperfections within, since only in acknowledging we have a problem that our beings, our embodiments, and with it our work and our actions are shaped by strong and dominant social societal biases, we may start being accountable to them and exploring how to do things differently, maybe better. Another suggestion is to name the norms that govern our work. In searching for and naming the normative tendencies, expectations, and assumptions shaping our designs, that will comprise only the first step towards encountering them and creating more equity-related awareness. And ultimately, better research. And within that imperfection, I finally suggest that we embrace the inherent mess of our living, sweating, stumbling, swearing bodies. Embodied computing is full of politics, which are currently shaped more normatively and abstracting away from the inherent messiness of living. But living is exciting, and so are the messes we have. And in that, I return to Di Paolo Cufati and De Jager again, who state, I quote, "There are literally billions of different human bodies. We should be aware of drawing general conclusions from their apparent universals." End quote. There are so many more opportunities we may take up, so much more to do. And there are so many more bodies we might attend to in embodied interaction. We just have to do it. So let me close by thanking you for having made it to the end of this video, which asks some uncomfortable questions. So truly, thank you for the time to sit with this discomfort and with that. And it's the first step anyone can do for holding ourselves accountable for the work that we do and the unintended but nevertheless impactful ramifications it might have. I'm looking forward to your ideas on how we might tackle these issues in embodied interaction going forward. Thank you.